Here we go. Going live. Okay, we are live, it looks like. And there is a little bit of a lag. So Kristen, it might take a minute for us to show up, but hopefully we'll be there in like about 2 minutes. But I'm gonna kick us off because everything is telling me on my end that we are actually live. So let's see, I'm gonna give it a few extra minutes, but Kristen, will you let me know if we...
Yep, we just popped up.
Okay, great.
Oh, the cat.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, this is great. We're actually live. I did it. I figured it out. We're live. We're here.
We made it.
Yeah, and it looks like we have a few people watching. So this is so great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Rewriting Adoption. My name is Rachel, and I'm going to kick us off. I'm joined today by 4 other amazing adoptees. We're so glad you're here. We have a pretty heavy topic tonight, but we're also just very excited. This is the first part of a 4-part series for May. So we hope you can join us. Our next one is going to be on Saturday, and then we'll have another one the following Monday and Saturday. So super excited about that. But tonight we're talking about abortion. So a very heavy topic. But we felt really strongly as a team that we wanted to come out and talk about some of the things that we've been talking about on our team calls. And we've just seen so many adoptees on Adoptee Twitter and on the Adoptee Instagram community and Adoptee TikTok. Adoptees are everywhere, which is so exciting. And we've been listening and following for quite some time, but now it seems like we have some other people that are starting to listen and follow along. So we really wanted to just hop on and acknowledge the adoptees that are doing amazing work in this space, and just talk about, from our perspective as adoptees, what we feel when talking about abortion in present day context with everything that's been going on with the leaked Roe v. Wade report. We wanted to talk about those things. So I'm going to kick us off. I'll introduce myself, and then we'll go around real quickly and introduce ourselves, and then we'll just get into it. This is going to be super casual. So like I said, we were having our team meetings regularly, and then we wanted to kind of open it up to bring these conversations to a more public light. So again, this will be very casual. If there are any adoptees watching, please, please, please feel free to comment below any of your thoughts, feelings, experiences, anything that you want to share. We would love to hear it. So I'll remind you that throughout the live. And if you see me on my phone, I'm reading your comments to our lovely panelists here. So yeah, I would love to have any adoptees that are joining us tonight comment below. We'd love to have you tell us where you're coming in from. That would be awesome. So like I said, my name is Rachel. I am one of the co-founders of Rewriting Adoption. I co-founded it with my sister, Sarah, who's not here tonight, but she's watching, hopefully. And I am a transracial adoptee. I am an international adoptee from Peru. And I am also in Reunion. I've been in Reunion for just about 6 months now. So that's me, and I'll hand it over to Isaiah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah. I am also a transracial adoptee. I am domestic from Wisconsin. Shout out to my Midwesterners, always. Yeah, I'm super glad to be here. I had another thought and then I forgot it. So we'll pass it off to Martha.
Hey everyone, I'm Martha. Hopefully you guys saw me this morning on Rewriting Adoption. I'll be there every Monday. But I am a transracial adoptee. I'm a domestic adoptee from foster care, but my birth parents immigrated from Mexico. So shout out to Mexico. Any Mexican adoptees out there, hit me up. I have been in Reunion for, wow, I guess it's been like a year and a half now, since the end of 2020, which is interesting, and I'm sure some of you guys can relate, but thanks for joining us. And yeah, that's my introduction. I will pass it to DJ.
Thank you, Martha. And everyone, check out Mondays with Martha on our Instagram handle. Hi, everyone. My name is DJ. I pronounce she, her. I am a transracial adoptee, and I was adopted domestically. However, my family of origin is from Peru. I'm really excited to get to know everyone. I consider myself an advocate for mental health, substance use, and substance use disorder support. And I'm just happy to be a part of the conversation today. I'm going to kick it over to Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm a private domestic infant adoptee. I love working with rewriting adoption. These people are awesome. I was in reunion. I now it's a secondary rejection kind of situation. I'm in estrangement with most of my adoptive family. What else did you guys mention?
I forgot that
That's
too.
pretty much it. That's me.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. But so glad you're all here. All right, so let's just kick it off. Let's just get right into it. I want to, like I said, we wanted to keep this super casual. So as things come up, feel free to jump in, everyone on this call, and anyone who has comments below, please feel free to jump in at any time. But for those who are tuning in, or for those who are going to watch the recording of this, because we are going to record it and leave it up, what do we want to say first off to anyone who might be new to this sort of conversation about adoption and abortion? And just for everyone who's watching, we as adoptees feel really strongly that adoption and abortion should be two separate conversations. Like, adoption should be left out of the conversation of abortion, but it is brought into the conversation quite often, and adoptees are often not the ones doing that. They're often actually ignored in this conversation. So that's why we wanted to sort of bring those things to light. But for anyone who is new to this sort of conversation, does anyone here want to sort of kick off how adoption gets brought in? Go ahead, DJ.
Hi, again, I'm DJ, she, her pronouns. The first time that I would like to say the first time that I experienced overlap between abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, and my own adoption. I was having a conversation with a very close family member where we differ on pro-life, pro-choice. And during one of our conversations, it turned into an argument. And I was told, well, what would have happened if your birth mom had aborted you? I was very hurt in the moment, and that is still used once in a while when we have this kind of discussion, argument. It's a family member, and which I've heard that other people outside of the family have said this to adoptees, and it's equally hurtful. It's equally triggering. I have refined my answer now to I feel that if that was a decision that my first mom wanted to make, then that is her choice, and that is something that I support. And I just wanted to share that experience. I am close with this family member, and it doesn't discriminate where it comes from. That comment can come from anywhere.
Yeah, DJ, and I'm so sorry that happened. I know I've heard from other adoptees who've experienced that as well, and it is just so harmful, so triggering, so unnecessary to the conversation. And I just don't even really know why it's brought into the conversation in that way. It's such a horrible thing to say. Do you mind sharing, if you're comfortable, what your sort of response is now to sort of comments like that?
So I don't necessarily know if I have a cookie cutter comment. It really depends on the person. I really only have a cookie cutter response to the person who I'm talking to. Just a little bit of background. My family is religious. We are very close with the Roman Catholicism Church, and I consider myself still a person who enjoys that, but has my own relationship. I connected to how religion is connected to my adoption story by my adopted parents and family, and just say, you know, if that was her choice, God or a higher power would have helped find me, like get me to my parents another way.
Mm-hmm.
And that family member seems to kind of back off at that point, because there's no really room for argument. And I do want to preface, this person and I do have a complicated relationship. However, I think it is easier to come up with a response when there's not that intimate relationship there. And maybe someone else could speak to what they might say. And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, has anyone else been confronted with that sort of statement, whether it be with a close family member or maybe a stranger online? And would you want to share what sort of your response is? Yeah, Kristen, go ahead.
It happened to me when I was in a debate in high school. It was in a speech class. It was like a mock debate. Like, I was so I was so excited to join the debate team next year. Like, I was loving the whole thing. And then I'm sorry about her, during a pro-choice and pro-life debate, I was on the side of choice, and a classmate just said, "Aren't you adopted? Your mom could have just aborted you. Like, why aren't you pro-life?" And then, like, literally the entire class looked at me like I owed them an explanation. It's like, I just ceased to exist in that moment. Like, I have no idea what happened the rest of the day, but like, the teacher just let it happen. Now I would go with what DJ said, and that's just like, that would have been her choice. And like, I don't know, I wouldn't even, it's like, kind of want to ask people when they say things like that to just like, do you hear yourself? Like, I really want to, I'm trying to find a nicer, less combative way to say this, but like, did you hear what you just said to me? You know, like, it's just, I don't know how that became a trend, but it needs to stop.
Yeah, for sure. And Martha, I saw you raised your hand.
Yeah, I haven't had anyone say that to me in person, but I have gotten into like debates online on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. Like, I've heard people say that, and I've commented to support, because usually it's like on an adoptees post, and then people have commented that same remark. So I, kind of reply to like come to their defense and speak up for them, so they don't just feel like they're just like dealing with all these comments by themselves. And I said something like, that's actually a really ignorant thing to say, because if you wouldn't say that to a non-adoptee, why would you say that to an adoptee? Because like, abortion or the decision or the option of abortion is present to every single woman that carries a child. It's not just women who have decided to give their child up for adoption. And also, not to mention that not all children who are displaced and put up for adoption or adopted, not all of us were relinquished from our birth parents. There's so many ways. So it's like, I just basically have retorted and told people that they're being really ignorant, and that you can't just assume or put a blanket statement for all adoptees. So I feel like it's just so irrelevant that they don't even know how relevant that comment is, because it literally might have nothing to do with how they became adopted. Like, abortion wasn't necessarily ever up for consideration. So yeah, I just pretty much tell people they're ignorant. I'm sure there's a nicer way to say it, but that's just what I say.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be necessarily nice in those conversations. I mean, where I see a comment here from Janine who says, well, anyone, and then in quotes, could have been aborted, not only as adoptees. So very similar to what you're saying, Martha. it's a cruel comment. It is absolutely a cruel comment, and it's extremely harmful. And I don't really understand why people think it's okay to say to adoptees, but they would never say it to anyone who's not adopted. And then we have another comment from beautiful Aisha. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing that. Transracial adoptees feel aborted once we are adopted against our will and in a closed adoption, regardless if it was a choice or not from our birth parents. Yeah, I really do feel that. I've heard a lot of adoptees say that, and I myself sometimes will say that when I hear those comments of like, well, would you rather have been aborted? And I'm someone who I'm pro-choice. So like, if that was my birth mother's choice, then yes, I fully like, right. And same with you. Like, if you're sitting here telling me you're pro-choice, like, I kind of want to just throw it back to them. You know, I think that that's it. We can throw it back to anyone, even whether you're adopted or not. So yeah, I think this is totally a time where you can, that sort of conversation is not a healthy, safe, to me, that's just not a safe space. That's not a safe conversation. So whatever you need to do to remove yourself from it, I think is important. Kristen, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and I don't like, I think most of the time people, I mean, no one asks that question because they want to know the answer. Like they're not asking how we feel. They feel like somehow they're going to triumph over us and like prove us wrong in our own experience. And that's another reason, that's another layer of the screwiness to it. But also it's like, I think people really need to realize that the adoptee suicide statistics, like we are far more susceptible to make an attempt. And every time you hear that, you know, it's like every time it's like, okay, well, thank you for the ideation thought in my head. Like that's just there now for the afternoon. Like, so right. That's, you know, it's really like, it's so insensitive for so many different reasons.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we're all starting to unfortunately get used to, whether it be with close family or friends, or which is like absurd, or just talking in general about this, is some of these really harmful comments. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Kristen. Yes, like for anyone who doesn't know, who's watching, I know every adoptee on this call knows that the adoptee suicide rate is attempted suicide rate is 4 times the national average. And that's a study that was like from many years ago. So it is a high risk community. And when we talk about mental health, this month is mental health awareness. Like this is something that everyone should be aware of. So when you're coming to a conversation with an adoptee, always come with an open mind, with an open heart, with empathy. And if you can't enter that conversation leading with empathy, then please just like exit the conversation so you don't cause additional harm.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting is that, you know, we don't punish women for getting abortions, but we definitely stick our noses up. You got an abortion. And then we do the same thing if they put up their child for adoption. You didn't stick with your child. You gave them away. And it's like, well, what do you want them to do? You know, you want the child to be born. You want them to go to a safe home. You want them to have this fairy tale lifestyle. But if the mother chooses what's best for her, what she sees as best for her child, either way, she's still getting. And even if she does keep the child and she's not financially, you know, stable, or is still going through school, or is, you know, a part of a minority demographic that doesn't have all the same opportunities, you know, then again, she's stuck in this corner and everybody's like, there she is. And I just think that aspect of abortion and adoption and or keeping it is just super unfair.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you just said, like, I don't know if I've thought about that, the sort of judgment on both sides. Yeah. And it's there. And that's the thing, we're very much in the middle of that conversation. Like we hear it about our birth mothers, and then we hear it like, would you have rather been aborted? So it's such like a very, very hard place to be. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask all of you, because And for any adoptees watching, would love to also hear in the comments, like how you're doing, how are you taking care of yourself? Like for me, this has been really hard. And I told this to my fellow panelists before we started. I love jumping on calls with them. I love being in a space with them. They're amazing. But I was not really looking forward to this conversation tonight just because this topic I feel like is everywhere right now in the news, in social media, in my personal conversations, when it hasn't normally been. I think like especially this adoption now coming to the forefront of this conversation. I would love to hear, like, how are you all doing? How are you taking care of yourselves? How are you prioritizing your peace? Are you able to do that right now? Or has it been really hard for you to sort of get away from it? Would love to just hear, and any adoptees listening too, I hope you are taking time to take care of yourselves and prioritize yourselves, because this is really, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. And I'm feeling it. I'm sure everyone here could speak to that a little bit, but yeah, I would love to hear if anyone wants to share and is comfortable sharing. How are you taking care of yourself right now?
I cried earlier. I was reading about just, abortion and adoption and what's happening right now, and then what has happened in the past, and, how whether, if a woman has an abortion, it's sad that she lost, what could have been, even if it is for the best, but then it's like the child is born and now it's, in a lot of articles, it was either adopted or an unwanted child. And it was the unwanted child, like, description that wasn't a part of the adoption that, like, really got to me. I'm like, wow. So there was just like, it funnels down. You're either not alive, which thankfully they wouldn't know what their existence would have been, but then they're alive and now they're either going to be adopted or they're going to be an unwanted child and filed away as that. And that just, like, ooh, it still gets me, like, and so yeah, I cried about that earlier today. I just needed to, like, release some emotions about it. I typically, I'm pro-choice. For a long time, I didn't really think about abortion. And when I did think about it, I was like, well, of course every woman should have their child. It's another child in the world. It's so happy. Definitely have changed my opinion on that. And yeah, I'm very much pro-choice. And how do I take care of myself around all of that? I just remind myself at the end of the day, women are humans first. They have every right to their body that a man does. A man should not be telling a group of women, you must have a child because we need this, and that, and the other. So I remind myself that I am second in the conversation and that I should advocate for women at any chance that we get.
Love that. Anyone else want to share how they're taking care of themselves right now?
I've kind of just been avoiding. So that's kind of my coping mechanism, is I just avoid it. I've been seeing all these articles and posts on my feed, and I honestly haven't read the articles. Like, I'm really happy that the adoptees are speaking out. Some of them got like articles or interviews on the news, but I just haven't had like the headspace to really just sit down and read it, because I already know what they're going to say. Like, I don't need to read the articles. And so it's just kind of heavy, and I've just been avoiding it. So that's how I've been coping.
Definitely a way to do it, for sure. I think unplugging and avoiding is something that we all have to do from time to time. And especially now, I think it's really important to kind of take a break from some of this. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I will. It's both lit a fire under my ass and broke me. Like, it's like, I don't know. I used to, it's now occurred to me that, like, oh my God, I had an abortion once when I was 16. Like, I got pregnant, same age as my mother, which is very common. Like, young pregnancies are just, it's like a super generational thing. And like, I never dealt with that, it's like, before I came out of the adoption fog, it was like, oh no, traumatic experience, you stay over there. And now I deal with things, like, I have to deal with things. So yeah, I'm just kind of, I don't know. I did also break down the other day, Like it was like something that started with like a maniacal laugh and then just ended up in tears. But yeah, it's I am happy that I hope people don't lose interest in a week. Because I feel like we have an end, like everybody is angry, or at least some people are angry about the term of domestic supply of infants. And it's like, all right, yeah, we have a lot to say. And I feel like some people are listening. So that gives me strength.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that, Kristen.
Ooh, I have a lot to say. I think it's okay if I whittle it down to I am pro-choice. I think growing up, before I understood, I saw like out of wedlock like having sex outside of a marriage as being wrong. And as I grew up, I kind of realized that there's so many different factors that go into it. And that changed my mind. I shout out to mom and dad if they're listening. I took my first pregnancy test when I was 16. I have never been pregnant before, but I have had multiple times where I've wondered, am I pregnant? Because things are not going as they should be. And I know that some family members that I have, if I ever were in the position to have an abortion, it would be difficult to be honest with them. I don't know what I would do if I were in that situation, but hearing that Roe v. Wade has the potential to be threatened. And I learned it after I was coming out from a support group, or an AA meeting. I just felt very beaten down, worn out, angry, sad, because I know that there are people who are pro-choice who say, all right, pro-lifers, put your money where your mouth is and adopt. And that makes me seething with rage, because there are so many children in our foster care system. There are so many children, adopted and not adopted, who are just wanted, that are a part of unhealthy families. And I wanted to just bring up I love that I'm stumbling over my words right now on live.
You're good.
So the domestic supply of infants was a footnote, and it was showing that it was supporting the actual quote is, and that a woman who puts her newborn up for adoption today has little reason to fear that the baby will not find a suitable home. I am one of the lucky ones. I have a family that loves me. We are not perfect. I describe my relationship to my parents and family as complicated because we get in fights. I am one of the lucky ones. I know adoptees that have been disowned for many reasons, one of them being part of the LGBTQ community. And I feel very protective of everyone who is in the adoptee constellation, everyone who is a foster youth. I feel very big sibling energy. But at the end of the day, the only thing I can do is take care of myself. This team has heard me say before, quote, and I don't remember her name, but it is the person who wrote the vagina monologues, Eve Evelis, I don't know. He says the most radical thing a woman can do is to love her body. And I have been sharing with my team or the team that the most radical thing adoptees can do is love ourselves and take care of ourselves. So with really painful honesty, I go to AA meetings. I go to Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And I also go to Marijuana Anonymous. And I get to get out my feelings to people who understand what it's like to hurt. And I go to therapy. I take prescribed medication, and I talk to the people on this team. Rachel, for those of you who don't know, asks us every day, every time we meet, how we're doing. And if it wasn't for that space, it would be very difficult for me to tell the team how I'm feeling. And I'm feeling angry about how adoption is ripped into the conversation of Roe v. Wade, both from a pro-life and a pro-choice stance.
Yeah, thank you so much, DJ. Thank you for everything you just shared and being so vulnerable. And to everyone here, just thank you so much for being so vulnerable. I think for everyone who's watching, if you are an adoptee, especially, DJ is right. That's something that I say a lot. Take care of yourselves right now. This is really heavy. It's really heavy stuff. And I think especially for adoptees of color right now, I just want to specifically acknowledge that. It's a really hard time for us right now. And I think the most thing that we can do is take care of ourselves and to prioritize our peace, protect our peace. I think for me, it's really hard to do that when I'm also feeling like Kristen. I'm feeling this motivation of like, people are actually listening. I want to speak up. I want to talk. I want to say something. But I also think there are so many adoptees in this community that are doing amazing things. And some of us can just sit and rest. Like that is something that you absolutely can do. Don't feel like you have to say something. You absolutely should and could if you can and are willing. But I think it's more important for us to protect our peace. I think just knowing everything that this community goes through, we need to take breaks. We need to just prioritize ourselves. And I also think for me, like, I don't have that perfect relationship with my adoptive parents. I'm in estrangement with my adoptive parents. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. And a lot of us adoptees are in that space. And I think it gets really frustrating when we hear so many people thinking that adoption is this wonderful, beautiful, special thing, when really it's just like everything else in life. There's a lot of pain, a lot of loss, a lot of grief. The difference is that it often is ignored and it's often silenced. And so, yes, we need to speak up and we need to talk about these things more, but also just like find spaces like this one. There's so many other adoptee support groups out there. As DJ mentioned, there's other types of support groups out there. Find those spaces where you feel safe, where you feel welcomed, where you feel loved. That's the most important thing. The last thing I want to talk about, and then we can kind of open it up to anything anyone else wants to talk about if there's any comments or questions. But for me, I'd say like the biggest frustration I'm having or the biggest anger I'm having, and I think it's kind of been brought up a lot, this domestic supply of infants, which was in the manifesto, us being sort of adoptees being used as political pawns on both sides of the argument around abortion. I feel like adoptees have always been commodified and continue to be commodified. We continue to be looked at as objects, ignored, like our trauma is ignored. We're just thought of as this supply. And I'm sitting here with 4 domestic adoptees who can, I think you all can speak to that. But I think for many of us adoptees, at some point in our life, we find out that there was money involved in our adoption. There was money exchanged for our adoption, and it makes us feel a certain way. And I think for me, that's what's bringing up all these feelings of people just aren't listening. People aren't seeing us as humans. Like, adoption should be a human rights conversation, not a supply and demand conversation, but that's unfortunately the reality of what it is. So I would love to hear from adoptees here and anyone in the comments, just how are you feeling with that? Because that's been my biggest thing right now is it just makes me feel so gross. And I just, especially in conversations where I'm feeling ignored, or in conversations where people say things like, well, would you rather have been aborted, when we're gaslit about our trauma, things like that. It just feels like people, like to Kristen's point, nationally, I think people are starting to listen. But in these like one-on-one conversations, it just does not feel like people are listening. And I feel like people just see us as objects. They don't see us as actual humans. And I would love to bring the human rights part back to this conversation. So would love to just hear around the commodification of adoptees. Does anyone have any feelings, thoughts, things that they want to share? Yeah, Martha.
Well, I feel like that term, like domestic supply of infants, that alone should show the public that this is not child-centered. Like, that is so obviously proof that what is wrong with the adoption system, that this is all about the prospective adoptive parents, to fill a void. I mean, there's always exceptions, but most of these people can't have children biologically themselves. So they're just like wanting a family to fall apart and not work out so that they can get that child. Like, that's what it's about. And they're not even trying to hide it, that that's what it's about. So even the whole anti-abortion thing, at its root, it's not about the child. It's about the need for all these parents that want the child that's not even born yet. And let's be clear, it's mostly, babies, like baby to adoptive parents directly, not to mention, all the children that are not babies, but they're older in the system just sitting there because they're not a baby. That the babies are the biggest commodities. They're the most desirable, like as if we're just objects. So that was just my thought. It's like, finally, like they're putting it out there, but yet a lot of people still, it hasn't really hit them what that means. So that was my 2 cents.
Well said.
Yeah, I think Amy Coney Barrett said something like, Americans don't need abortion, adoption exists. And I just think that is garbage. Like, utter just garbage to say, and to say that as like, of course, well, why would they need abortion? But then at the same time, the conversation when we're thinking about like birth parents and if they're contemplating abortion, it's not necessarily always abortion or adoption. It's still like, we're still like the third option. It's usually be a parent or get an abortion. And then it's, if they don't want to do either, then it's, well, how do you feel about adoption? So I feel like adoptees are often just like, put off to the side, like, we'll deal with you later. And then when it's like time for them to go on and show, it's like, okay, now be happy. Okay, just forget about all the trauma. Okay, now like just look at this happy life that you're gonna get in the process of, losing your parents and not being aborted, and now you're alive, and good luck. You have some stuff and some money, hopefully, from your adoptive family, and that's that, and then we go out the door, and then there's no, services, public services afterwards, when adoptees turn a certain adults, there's no services to support their mental or emotional needs. If they leave home early, there's, where are they going to go? Who can they turn to? They don't have connections to their biological, and if they're cut off from their adoptive family, then they're just left in the middle and have to fend for themselves. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing. Kristen, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, the commodification. My adoption day is my adoptive mother's birthday, and Yeah, so I was a literal gift. And, I grew up hearing like, everybody said it like it was so sweet. I grew up hearing like, oh, they had they tried for years to have their own baby, and then they had another adoption fall through, and the third time's a charm, after several decades of desperately trying to have their own child. And people are telling me this like it's precious or something. Oh. And I've been thinking more about it lately. It's like my birthday is very close, or the day that I think is my birthday, because I do not believe anything until I see that freaking piece of paper. But it's like my birthday is pretty close to my adoptive mom's birthday, and it is very possible that it just worked out that way. But it's ultimately about satisfying the paying customer. So it is very possible that I sat in, it was like they just worked it out that way, like, ooh, let's put a bow on it. And and just the fact that, as the narrative goes, this birth mother is doing something so wonderful and so selfless, and oh, these people can't have children and you'll be giving them a gift. Like, why did I owe them? Like, why did I owe them being a gift? Why on earth? Like, how did this ever come to be? Like, how did, I just don't understand how adoptees ended up being so voiceless, and adoptive parents ended up being so revered and praised. And everybody looks at them so sympathetically, like, oh, we couldn't have a child. Like, I'm not doubting. I'm not saying that that's not absolutely devastating, but like, it's not children's job to fix. Like, we can't be somebody that we were never supposed to be, that we can never be. Mm-hmm. And that's what we end up having to do. And hence to suicide statistics and addiction statistics and all of the stuff. Yeah. And then the talking about us like we are not in the room, that is the thing. Like, if anybody is out there, a non-adoptee who is watching, and if anybody out there is making like gaining a following by speaking about this Roe versus Wade, and like how, if you've never even thought about adoption or foster before, and all of a sudden you're talking about it on your page and you're gaining followers from it, the least you could do is tag adoptees. Say, like, especially if you have a large following, say adoptees are the experts in the adoption experience. They live it every day. They've lived it every day. That they are the absolute most affected. Like, I just want to normalize non-adoptees saying that, because I don't know, maybe they'll listen to non-adoptees. Like, if a bunch of non-adoptees start being like, hey, they're people, like, they don't listen to us, but maybe they'll listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
hey, drop tags for adoptees accounts. Like, just get people following adoptees.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way. Like, if you can't share right now, or if you can't talk right now, if you need to take a break, that's a great way. Whether you're adopted or not, please promote adoptees right now. Like, we should be at the very front of every adoption conversation. So if adoption is brought into the abortion conversation, which we don't think it should be, but if it is, adoptees should be front and center and talking first, not adoptive parents, not birth parents. Unfortunately, like, this affects us the most. And I think that's, I would love for that to see that happen more. And we're starting to see it in some major news publications. So I would love for that momentum to keep going. But yeah, I think that very simply, like, we're humans. I think that's the biggest thing. If you take away one thing from this and you're not adopted, just like, know that we're humans. All the adoptions that you're talking about right now, the unadopted children, the supply, those are humans. Those are human beings that we're talking about. Like, I don't understand why there's that disconnect. But I think adoptees, our identities, like, we intersect with so many different issues that are happening in our country, in our birth countries. If we're international adoptees, like, we're at the center of it all. So you should be listening to us. And when it comes to fertility and infertility, like, yes, for sure, that is a very traumatic experience, which is why you should probably not enter into adoption. If you are going through something traumatic, you need to resolve that trauma before you become a parent, especially before you become a parent to an adoptee who has their trauma right off the beginning and needs support. So those are my things. Like, I'm someone who has experienced infertility, so I can sit here and say that, like, yes, that was traumatic for me, but that never would give me the right to, like, take someone else's child. That's just not something that me as a human being thinks that I have the right to another human being's child. I don't know why that's such a complicated thing to see. And again, I really just would love for people to listen to adoptees, not just about abortion, but about big issues that are affecting so many of our communities, because we see it. And that's one thing that I would say to all adoptees who are listening right now. If you're feeling like really low, really dark, really heavy, this is a heavy conversation, at least we see it. Like, we can see it and we're not buying it. We're not, like, we see the reality of it. And I can at least sit here and say, I know what's happening and I know what this conversation is about. And I have truth in that, and I know it. So, like, I feel somewhat better knowing that I'm not buying into this, like, narrative that has been sold to so many people. And that's what rewriting adoption is here for. We want to change it. We're here to change it. And adoptees are going to do that. I really do feel that. I really do know that that's going to happen. So whether you're, like, new to this conversation, you've been here for a while, maybe this is the first time you've heard adoptees speak about this, maybe this is like the 100th adoptee conversation you've heard, but adoptees know what's up. Adoptees know what's real. And you should really listen to what we're saying when it comes to this conversation. And all we're trying to say is, if you aren't adopted, your story might be very simple. It might be that your mom was pregnant with you. She went to the hospital. She gave birth to you. She came home, and that's your story. That's it. But that was not our story. Our story is very different from that. And we are allowed to talk about it, and we're allowed to share our experience, and we're allowed to explain why there's so much complex trauma that goes into that. And everything that you know about adoption, unless you've been learning about it like we have, everything you know about the industry, unless you've been learning about it like we have, like, you know nothing about it. This conversation of, like, unwanted children, most of us were not unwanted. Most of us were very much wanted by our birth mothers, but because of poverty, because of like, all these things that are wrong in our country and other countries, our birth mothers couldn't keep us even though they wanted to. So pretty much everything you know about adoption, unless you've been invested in this conversation for a really long time, is probably wrong. And so we'd love for you to listen to adoptees. We'd love for you to listen. I'd love for you to follow every single one on this call. We've posted everyone's information in this description. There's also been a number of adoptees talking in the comments below. I'd love to have you go and follow them and support them. I want to leave it to the rest of the group here. If anyone has anything you'd like to say to adoptees before we sign off, please feel free to jump in and say something, and we'll end it here. But yeah, DJ, what do you want to say?
Hey y'all. Starting to get a headache. Hey, I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but I just want to speak to adoptees, and non-adoptees can also, get a viewpoint. Make space for adoptees from, if they were adopted at birth, if they were in the foster care system, if they were a late adoptee, to grieve, because the separation between us adoptees and our first moms that maternal deprivation, even if we were given straight into a family, even if we were, as Kristen said, labeled a gift from God, there's pain that may not be a memory, but we can still feel it. And whether it's about Roe v. Wade, whether it's about domestic supply of infants, there needs to be reform to focus on the child, be child focused, and non-adoptees need to understand that the parents, even if they do the best they can, need to be informed and find information and grow with the adoptee. If an adoptee comes because their first mom is unable to take care of them, there's a loss. And a lot of us on this call had to figure it out on our own. Know that we're with you, we see you, we hear you, we accept you. And non-adoptees, if you're on this call, thank you so much for listening. And don't let it just end here. Take what you can and bring it into your own life. Advocate, become an ally to adoptees. Because as you know, we are fighting to have a voice.
We're
Tired.
We're tired. That's mic drop.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say something. It's gone. She's gone.
No worries. You said some awesome things. Anyone else before we end?
Kristen, was it about a gift?
I really, really hope this thought comes back into my friggin' brain before we get off here, because it was important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to.
Well, that is totally okay, because we will be back on Saturday. And we'd love to have everyone join. Again, we're going to be here on the 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern. And we're actually going to be talking about one of our favorite topics, adoptive parents. So if you are here, you're an adoptee, we'd love to have you come back. If you are not an adoptee, we'd love to have you come back. We have a lot of things to say about adoptive parents, a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. I am really happy that this conversation happened. I was not looking forward to it, but like I said, it turned out great. I hope everyone is able to take care of themselves. Kristen, did you remember your thoughts?
Okay, I was going to say, piggybacking off of what DJ said, it's okay, so I'm sure that it's extreme. If you are a person who is not adopted, or even if you're an adoptee who has never heard anybody speak critically about adoption, it probably feels like your insides are it's really, really uncomfortable, I'm sure. But the thing is, if you don't if non-adoptees don't face the uncomfortable aspects of adoption, how it's not child-centered, it's not it's kind of a mess, then we just have to adoptees just have to continue to take the brunt of it. And we've been uncomfortable our entire lives because we've had to keep it inside, and that's just not fair. And that's just not something that you do to someone that you love. So if you love an adoptee, give them a ton of space. I had 33 years worth of pent up by the time I came out of the fog. It's a lot. It's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
And it's so if you have a friend, just give them lots of time. Don't treat them like they're annoying. It's literally a lifetime full of stuff. Anyway.
Yeah.
There.
Listen to adoptees. Take care of the adoptees in your life just by supporting and listening to them. And if you're an adoptee yourself, take care of yourself. Please prioritize yourself right now. This was a heavy conversation. So afterwards, I saw someone in the comments say that they're doing yoga to help. Drink tons of water. That's what I'm doing. I've also been meditating. I have PTSD and I've heard great things about meditating. So I'm trying to meditate more. So whatever you can to get some self-care in. If you need to take a break from social media, whatever you need to do, just please know that this community is always going to be here for you no matter what. Even if you delete Instagram or Twitter off your phone, this community will still be here. We will still have your back 100% always. So please, please, please prioritize your peace. Take care of yourself, and we will see you all on Saturday. So I'm going to end the stream now. Everyone on this call will still be on Zoom, but I'm going to end the stream. But thank you so much for being here. This has been great.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.